On Show. I believe that life, much like rucking, is a journey. On this show, we examine various aspects on this ruck march of life. From overcoming obstacles to dealing with setbacks, there's a takeaway for you on your journey. The Ruck On Show is sponsored by the Ruck On 30-Day Challenge. Grab your copy of this Rucking Workout Challenge at ruckon.com. That's ruck-on.com. Let's get started with today's show. All right. Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Ruck On Show. Tonight I'm joined by another fellow West Point classmate of mine, Niles Mitchell. Niles and I have shared a couple of different classes back at West Point, some summer training, just an all-around solid guy. I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and what you're up to right now.
All right. Well, first, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's awesome to talk to you after so long, and how we both have changed a lot since then. But I'm Niles. Originally from Florida, born and raised. That may be very rare, but I am one of those people. And of course, I went to West Point as well, and graduated, commissioned, served for a few years in the Army, stationed in both Fort Sill, Oklahoma, then Joint Base Lewis McChord, Washington. And after I got out, I moved down to where I am now in Atlanta, and currently I am working as an engagement manager or sort of a technical consultant with Amazon Web Services.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate having you on, Niles, and it's been fun catching up before the show, and I'm sure we'll catch up a little bit afterwards. So first, what I like to do is I kind of see two parallels between rucking and life. One kind of being, when you're on a ruck march, you're going from point A to point B, and in life, your point A is where you're born and point B is where you end up at the end of your life. But then the other parallel I see is, instead of, just your 12-mile ruck march that you do, during summer training and stuff, you ruck from one objective to the next objective and the next objective. And in life, we kind of, we have a goal of, I guess, for, say for, in our case, want to go to West Point. Okay, we got to West Point. Now we got to get through 4 years of West Point and commission. We commissioned, and, kind of each new life goal or professional goal that we tackle is kind of a mini ruck in the greater ruck of life. So I'm just kind of curious what parallels or kind of how you see the relationship between rucking and life.
Now that you mentioned it, there are a lot of parallels that I could definitely see, and you mentioned some good ones. And I know while I'm rucking, I never, thought, well, man, this sure is a lot like life. But hindsight is 20/20, and looking back on it, it really is. And I would say that what readily jumps out at me is the parallels between rucking and the trials and tribulations that you will have throughout your life. And a perfect example of this is, forget about how long the ruck is. Think about how the terrain is, right? Because you can have a short ruck, but some really bad terrain, and it's gonna hurt. And I think about, maybe you're coming up on this really big hill, and you could see the hill before you get there. It's an impending an impending doom. So that's what you're thinking about, right? You're
Mhm.
thinking about the hill, even though you're on flat ground. And that's a lot like life, because you can know that you have a trial coming ahead of you, a challenge coming ahead of you, and that can get in the way of you enjoying where you're at right then and there. And I think that's an important lesson to learn, is that while you're on flat ground, just worry about being on flat ground. Don't worry about the hill until you get to the hill. Like while I'm rucking, I learned to try not to even look up at the hill. Just keep my head up at the back of the person in front of me, or maybe I'm looking around scanning to make sure that there isn't an enemy nearby,
Right.
and I'm not worrying about that hill. I'm worrying about the flat ground that I'm on right then and there. And when I get to the hill, that's when I worry about the hill. So when you're in life and you get to a challenge, it's good to be prepared for challenges. Like, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, you shouldn't let the existence or the knowledge of an impending challenge get in the way of your enjoyment of where you're at, the flat ground you're on. And when you get to the actual challenge, when you get on it, then you take it step by step, like you're doing a run, step by step, and you keep going forward. You keep pushing forward, because eventually, after so many steps, you crest that hill. And then one of the greatest things to feel is when you feel that downhill feeling after you just came on
Yeah.
one of those big hills. And same thing with life, after you just overcame a big challenge in your life, it could be one of the most liberating feelings to have, to know that, yes, you survived. Because at the bottom of the hill, you may have been saying to yourself, how in the world am I going to overcome this? I'm going to fall out, you know. I'm not going to be.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to look at me and they're going to say, he's weak, or he can't hang with the rest of us, or he didn't train hard enough. Some of those doubts that come in your head. But you get to the top of the hill and you're like, I actually
Did
did it.
it.
I did everything that I had trained up for. I prepared myself for. I was prepared for this. And you keep going, and you keep going throughout that ruck until you finish that ruck. And that is life. You keep going through life until the day that you move on from life and you overcome those hills. Because at the end of every hill and at the end of every challenge is the down end. It's the liberating end. It's the feel good end.
No, that's really powerful, really insightful. I think is especially how you mentioned it's good to know and be prepared for the challenge because they're going to be there, but not letting yourself get sucked into it before you're there, and kind of being present and enjoying where you're at, because where you're at might be really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then being, once you get there, is you're only going to tackle it by being present, taking it step by step, just like you said. I think yeah, that's a really, really, really interesting parallel. That's awesome. Okay, well, so we I know quite a bit more about you than probably most of the audience, unless a whole bunch of our classmates start watching. But is there any particular ruck or challenge that you would like to share that, either maybe what you're going through right now or you've overcome and, you're enjoying, the steady
Yeah.
downhill?
I now I'm trying to think of all the I'm trying to think of all the rucks that that I've had, and ones that were particularly challenging. Um, Actually, there was one. I'll give you one of each. Right, there was one during Beast, and I think we were just doing a short. We were doing a short ruck. Maybe it was 3 miles or something like that. Right.
Uh-huh.
And I had been wearing the issued boots.
Oh.
You already know how this goes, right? So I remember them giving us this list of the boots that we can have, and I got the Kybers, and I don't know, I thought those were the most comfortable things ever, right? And then all of a sudden, we show up to Beast, and they took our bags, and they threw them all in a room, and everything that was in those bags we didn't touch. So my boots and land
Oh,
that I
you're.
brought didn't touch them, didn't touch any of that stuff, right? Only
Oh
the
man.
issued stuff. And I guess this was company dependent, because I don't think anybody else had a similar experience, because I think some people got to use their stuff. But
I
I ended up
honestly
using
can't
my
remember.
issued. I know it was so long ago. We just, what is it? It's about to be July 2nd right now. We're coming up on 8 years,
Oh
right? Within the
yeah.
next week, it will be the 8-year mark. So, of our day. Wow. But yes, I ended up using, I think they were Bellevues or whatever,
Oh,
but
the Bellevilles.
those things were too small, right? Yeah, Bellevilles. Yeah, that's right. They were too
That's
small.
what I had.
And when we started rucking with them, they ended up tearing off the skin on my feet, like to raw, to pink, blood coming through the socks, like some of the worst
Oh.
pictures you could
Oh.
even think of. Like, it was really bad. And so, this is your 18-year-old, your first experience with the military. You're thinking, hey, I got to suck it up, right? And, you show any weakness. One of your squad leader, your platoon sergeant, particularly my platoon sergeant, I'll never forget her. I won't slander her name here, but will not forget her. She just told me to suck it up. She didn't want to see it. She just told me to suck it up. So I kept going, kept
Jeez.
pushing, kept getting worse. And after Ruck, we had ended up going to a range, and I couldn't walk to go retrieve our targets from off the range,
Yeah.
and the medic pulled me aside. He's like, "What's going on?" I said, "Corporal, my feet, my feet are killing me." He's like, "Oh, here's some moleskin." I'm not, no, Corporal, you need to look at these things. And we struggle to take off my boots, and like the skin is coming off. There's
Oh yeah.
peels off my sock and everything. He took one look at those things, and he ran straight to my platoon sergeant, and he started chewing her out because she had let it get to that point. It was, I
Oh
was in
man.
pain, but I was very happy to see that happen. After that, I was able to get some nice uh, some more moleskin and some nice ointment and everything to help me get
Soft shoe
back.
profile for a bit.
I got a soft shit profile for a little bit there too, until my skin came back. But
Jeez.
that was one of the rough memories of rucking. I think that set the trend in my experience for rucking, because every time I would ruck, I would always like remember that moment. I'd be like, I got to be careful when I'm doing this. But I would say another time, this is a lot shorter story, but after I ended up having shoulder surgery, which would lead me into the second part of this, wrecking became something that was very difficult for me.
Yeah,
And
understandably.
I'll let that lead me into the story of an actual challenge that I've had to overcome, which was back in my last year of West Point during CLDT. I ended up we were doing a movement to contact, and we were all moving from point A to point B on this ridge line, and we took contact from the Op 4. And when that happened, excuse me, I stepped on top of a boulder that wasn't secure, ended up falling down, and popping out, subluxating both my shoulders.
Ooh.
And so they pop back in. The guy asked me, "You want to keep going?" I kept going. I was like, "Yeah, I'm not going to stop and keep going. Pain ain't nothing, right?" So kept going, and later that night we set up a patrol base, and we ended up getting attacked by Op 4 again. but my shoulders were so messed up by that point that I was off the line. I wasn't pulling security. And for those of us who were off the line, we were resting. And when we got attacked, as everybody rushes to the line to go assist, as I sat up, my shoulder was completely dislocated. And in the middle of this attack by Op 4, all the chaos is going on. I'm sitting here with my shoulder out of my socket. And I remember the one person who was able to break focus from what was fake and into what was real was Angie Dixon. And she,
Angie.
Angie, she went and tried to get everybody she could to come, help me and make sure I got the actual attention I need. This is no longer a drill.
Medical,
yeah, exactly. And I remember her going up and yelling at the lane officer that was there, one of the attacks from West Point. She yelled at this major, telling him, "Hey, no, you need to take care of this now." So they call the medic over. The medic is like, "Oh yeah, his shoulder's messed up." They take me off the field. They bring me over to the actual hospital. Ended up staying there overnight. Got seen by the orthopedic surgeon, and within a couple days, I was having surgery. He told me I had completely tore my labrum and both shoulders all around. And so
Jesus.
I had surgery within those couple days, and I had to sit out the last week of CLDT. I had done everything that was obligatory for me in CLDT to get graded.
Okay. Right.
And so eventually that ended up serving in my favor to help me get credit for it. But ended up, going home, healing up, and then I got my brace off right before we came back for the semester. And not a month into the semester, I ended up getting in my car accident. And, me and a couple of boys were out in Newburgh, and we had came back, and the driver had unfortunately lost control of the car. And I was sitting in the back, and the car hit a guardrail. It flipped over a bunch of times, and it caught on fire. And the front two passengers were able to, the driver and the passenger were able to get out. And I was still in the back, while it's catching on fire from the bottom of the car and working its way up. And while it rolled, my head had struck the ceiling of the car multiple times. And, I was kind of dazed, but there was smoke everywhere, and I knew I had to get out. So I kicked the front or the passenger seat forward, because it was a coupe. It wasn't a four-door vehicle.
Oh, gotcha.
So I had to kick that forward, and then I got out of the car. And as I got out of the car, I kind of exited the side of the car and went towards the trunk. As my body passed the trunk of the car, like I stepped out and I stepped into fire. And as my body passed the tail end of the car, the whole thing was in flames. Like I didn't have time to grab anything, right? And I guess the worst part about it, from my perspective, was that when we were returning back to West Point, and I was tired. So I told the passenger, I said, I handed him my CAC, and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna go to sleep, and wake me up when we get there." And instead of being woken up when we got there, I woke up to the car spinning,
right,
and, rolling over. And so after all that happened, we got back, and I tried to make it through the semester and really push through that semester. But it took them a very long time to realize that I had more than just a concussion. It took them months to realize that. And then finally they realized, okay, he has moderate traumatic brain injury. We're going to figure this out by sending him to Walter Reed. And I think it was in November, first semester of our first year, they had sent me to Walter Reed, and Walter Reed said, "Hey, you need to stop right now, everything you're doing, and you need to go in medical leave because you have moderate TBI." And so I left, I came back, and by that point I had really It was like probably the hardest academic semester I've ever had in my life. I had really put some effort into there, and I was failing 2 classes. And so I ended up working with West Point's the registrar and everything, and they ended up. I finished the semester out to the protest of some of the medical people, but there's no way I could go do that again, right? If I came back, I'd had a whole another year.
Right.
And so I managed to work with the registrar and everything, and they dropped the 2 classes I was failing for me, and I took my grades as is. I didn't take T's. So when T week came, I left, I went home, and I went on medical leave. And that's when the road to recovery really, started, because I knew what was wrong. I knew how I had to, kind of address the problem. But when I left on medical leave that January, so December left on medical leave, January, I had to come back because I had to have surgery on my other shoulder.
Jeez.
So now, so then I had surgery on my second shoulder. I had the TBI and everything. I was going through behavioral stuff because, concussions and all that. It just so much changes, and really trying to figure out what was going on, and how to redirect my life and put it back on the path that it's supposed to be on, right? Or the way I saw it going. And I had to really reach down, mentally and emotionally, to take control of myself, because one of the hardest things for me back then was knowing that I wouldn't be able to graduate, in May 2016 with everybody else. That was so hard because, the day you show up for our day, what day you're graduating. And all those rucks that you went on with everybody else, the blood, the sweat, tears you put in, you want to be able to walk the stage with your classmates. That's the most important thing, right? And so that was a really hard thing for me to overcome, especially because I know that I didn't crash the vehicle, and I don't blame the driver either, but I know that it was
control.
Yeah, it was completely out of my control. And so trying to come back at the end of that year was a matter of taking an APFT, right? I wasn't ready physically. I wasn't ready mentally. All right. I had been in such a poor emotional state that even when I did try to prepare for it physically, I prepared wrong, and I'm getting overuse injuries and things like that, and end up failing my APFT to return. Most people don't even know that, but I did. I failed that first APFT, and I ended up having to go back home and, kind of with my tail tucked between my legs, and work even harder to make that dream of graduating a reality. And I really had to look at myself and do some reflection and say, how am I going to push forward? How am I going to go ahead? And that was the part where, you see that you're on a hill, but you focus on the part of the hill that you're on right there. And you take it step by step. And that's when I knew that, I had to keep training hard. If I get shin splints or, my shoulders start hurting again or anything like that, you keep going. If you start feeling sorry for yourself that, you're not graduating with your classmates or something like that, you keep going, because you will end up graduating. You will end up, getting better, getting to the point where you want physically. You just have to put in that work, and you have to believe in yourself first, because if no one else believes in you, there's only one person who would, and that's yourself. So I ended up, feeling really good about it. And I came back in November of that year, 2016, take the second APFT. I ended up failing that one too. And to me, it was the biggest surprise, because I was passing it at home. I was doing everything I needed to. I felt better. What happened? How did I end up failing? But it was a gut check. And I think I had more room for growth, personal growth and development. And I dive deeper into my faith. I dive deeper into everything that would make me better as a person. I ended up moving from my home in Florida, moving to South Carolina because my plebe year roommate, he was prior service. I don't know if you remember him, Matt. He was prior
Matt.
service, ended up leaving. Matt McDaniel. He
Name rings
ended
a
up
bell.
he ended up leaving after Yuck year. He
Okay.
didn't sign the commitment because he didn't want to be in the Army anymore. But he had went to Clemson before he had enlisted in the military, before he went to West Point, so he went back to Clemson. So I moved to Clemson. I completely took control. I said, I'm not living, in my parents' house. I'm gonna get my apartment. I'm gonna pay for it, all my stuff. I'm gonna work hard, and if I don't get to go back to West Point, because you only get 2 times to take that test, right?
Mm-hmm.
You only get 2 times to take the test, and then they don't let you back in. So after the second time, I thought, I wasn't going back to West Point, but I said, I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm good until they tell me that
You're done.
I'm not going back. I'm going to train like I have another test, and I'm going to also work my butt off to make sure that I'm not just sitting around doing nothing. I'm making money. I'm earning a living. I'm building my resume. I am doing the things that a grown-up should be doing to provide for themselves and eventually to set themselves up for providing for their family. And then I get a call, February of 2017, and it's from the new TAC NCO saying that I didn't get properly counseled for my first APFT failure to return. And because of that, I got another chance to take an APFT.
Oh, hey, that's...
And yeah, I was like, oh my gosh. I looked up to the sky and I said, thank you, God. Thank you, God. And I was so excited. I called everybody. I said, hey, I got another chance. I'm going to take this. I'm going to seize this. I'm going to make it happen. And a couple months later, I told him, I said, when do you need me there? He's like, in a couple months, May, come over here, come up and take the test. I said, Roger, Sergeant, I will be there. And I showed up and I brought Matt with me and I made him, run that APFT with me, do everything. And I remember, he's a civilian by this point. You can't he's running APFT with me again. I know he didn't want to do that, but he went out of his way to make sure that I was where I needed to be. And I remember him running alongside me in the APFT, and he was dying. I could see his soul leaving his eyes. And while that was happening, I was like, I can't let this all be for nothing. And I just pushed that much harder. Ended up passing the APFT. I came in, I was like yelling and screaming. I was so excited. And then they said, okay, we'll get the paperwork started and you'll be coming in that fall. And so that fall semester, I ended up returning. And funny thing was, after taking the APFT, returning that fall semester, I had to take another APFT. So I took that one, passed that again, and I was like, just to be sure, here's a second pass for you.
Yeah.
And I finished that semester off, and some of the feelings started to come up again. I knew I was graduating, but throughout that whole semester, I had been with a class that that senior class, that first class of 2018. So they're 2 years behind us. And it was a little hard because it was a whole different environment. I mean, a whole different culture. They had fixed buildings that were broken when we were there.
Right.
They had new buildings that when we were there. The firstie was the new firstie, right? And it was kind of it was open. The new one was open. So I got to see that one. It was pretty crazy.
Man.
But one of the things for me was that culture shock of coming back and just feeling like, this old dog amongst these young pups. And I learned a lot from them, though. I couldn't shut myself off from them because I was a couple years ahead of them before. I learned a great deal from them. And I'm so happy for the experience of having fell back and having to rely on all those people, because all those people help build me up. They help support me, right? You know, sometimes you're in a ruck and there are people who are maybe falling back, but there's someone who gets behind them and they push them forward, help them get over that hurdle. And that's what a lot of people did for me, helping me get from the point of being in the lowest part of my life, and helping me get up past that and actually be successful. And it helped me create a new perspective in the face of adversity and failure. Because after that, failure meant something that makes me stronger, right? So when I commissioned, and, you know, I went to Bullock, Fort Sill, FA Bullock, and I had ended up re-injuring my shoulder. I was like, there's just another opportunity to get stronger, to learn, and push. And when I got to my unit, and it kept going there, and eventually one of the doctors was like, hey, you're going to need surgery again. And if you need surgery again, that means we're going to have to medically retire you, which is what inevitably ended up happening. I looked at it as a different opportunity then. I said, okay, well, yes, what I had planned for me, what I had fought so hard to get to, right? To be in the Army, to be, officer for multiple years, for over a decade, right? I had that plan. I said, plans change, right? Whether you want them to or not, but it's about how you react to that plan, right? A tree falls down while you're rucking, you step over the tree. If you can't step over the tree, you go around the tree. You keep going. You don't turn back around because a tree fell in your path. Yeah. You find some way to adapt, to improvise, and to overcome, right? And so when I knew I was retiring from the military, I knew I had to then focus again on the ground that I was on, focus about building up my foundation so that I'd be prepared for that transition that I was having. And I took opportunities to go into internships and network and get to know people out in the civilian world, the civilian sector, so that I can set my transition up perfectly. And I did an internship with Amazon in Seattle, and thinking that after the end of this 3-month internship, I would be able to get a job offer for that position that I was interning for. And that was another punch in the mouth right there, because I didn't get it, right? And I had worked hard. I got a bunch of compliments on my job and the work that I was doing, but they said, hey, we need somebody more senior for this position. And I was like, oh, okay, roger that. You got to Charlie Mike, then you got to figure something out, because you still got to put food on the table, right? So I reached out to my connections, and this great guy named Nick Curry, Amazon. He found an open job application that I could apply to at Amazon, and I applied to it, and I ended up getting it. But it was about me being diligent in that network, me not giving up, me pushing forward, and understanding that there is always an end to a ruck, right? There's always an end to a challenge. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. You have to get there. And you have to understand that even you may not be able to see it, but it's there as long as you keep going step by step, right? And so I applied to that job, ended up getting it, and it's catapulted me into a position in life that I could have never expected, right? Maybe I did stay in for 10 years in the Army and ended up getting out, but maybe I didn't get a job half as good as this one is to set me up for the things that I want in life, right? Maybe I look 10, 15 years down the road and I am a successful actor, and I ask myself, how did that end up happening? Well, I ended up medically retiring from the Army, and had that not happened, I may not have been able to jump into acting the way I did when I got out in Seattle. Because one of the things I learned is when you're going through trials and tribulations, there are things you have to be able to do that will help ease your mind and keep you not focused on that trial, that hill, right? So if you're
Yeah.
rucking, maybe you count backwards from 100. Maybe you tap on your rifle or something, or maybe you count the blades of grass you pass by, right? For me, that was acting. That was my ability to take my mind off all the stressors that I may have had, and I really dove into that. I gave it my all when I was doing it, and then when I came out, I felt clear-headed, and I was able to tackle all the obligations that I had. And I think that everything that I've gone through, everything that at times I may have said, I wish this wasn't me, woe was me.
Mm-hmm.
The people that I lost along the way, because I had a lot of family members that that unfortunately passed away, and a few of them while this was all happening. I think to myself, it all happens maybe not for a reason that you can see at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you remain optimistic, focused, and dedicated to always bettering yourself and moving forward, that reason will reveal itself as something that works in your favor, strengthening you, right? And it makes it easier for you to tackle challenges in the future. Something that you could pass on to somebody who really needs it, right? Because
Yeah.
whoever I meet from now on that is going through a similar situation, I'll be able to reach back into my own memories and experiences and tell them how they'll be able to make it through.
Right.
And someday I'm going to have kids, I'm going to have a son, I'm going to have a daughter and whatnot. I'm going to be able to tell them these exact same things and help them get through.
Well, it's definitely, at least in my opinion, really powerful. I mean, I don't think I even knew like a scratch on the surface about all the stuff that you were going through. I knew that you were going through surgery and stuff, kind of through the process. I was kind of going through my own being medically discharged from the Army too. But, for me, going through West Point, some of the stuff there was a little bit of a punch in the mouth, but it's eye-opening for me to know your story and a couple of other classmates that come to mind that they didn't just get punched in the mouth. They got punched in the mouth, they got kicked in the nuts, they got punched in the mouth again while they were down. And they still got through it. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. I know I've gotten value out of hearing that, and hopefully people that are watching this will too. Normally quite honestly, I'm like, if somebody can't take away something of value from that, then I don't know how to help them. So well, so how can people that are watching follow you, Niles, when you're a famous actor one day? And they'll be like, hey, I saw him way back when he was on the Ruck On Show podcast.
Yeah. So, my stage name is Niles Austin. So I instead of my surname, I end up going with my middle name.
Okay.
So Niles Austin, I feel like is a little bit more catchier than Niles Mitchell. But so my Instagram, my acting Instagram is the Niles Austin, just all one word. And of course I'll eventually make a website under the same name, so if anybody's trying to look me up that way. And of course my personal Instagram still exists, which is WST_NAM for all of my friends that may be watching, and all those who want to be friends or just want to reach out to me on a personal level. And maybe get some advice or just want to talk, and then of course, Facebook, Niles Prince Mitchell. A lot of people think Prince is my middle name. It isn't. It's actually it's a high school nickname, and I have not changed my Facebook name since I was 2008 in high school. So I just leave it for nostalgia purposes. But Niles Prince Mitchell, add me on Facebook as well. But yeah.
And we'll have links to all those on podcast and the YouTube video section of the show, so people can check that out and follow you, reach out to you. Anything else you want to say before we wrap this up? I really appreciate having you on the show, Niles. Thanks again.
No, I don't have anything else, but thanks, Joe, for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you, being part of this is my first podcast ever. So hopefully the first of many, but it's been a good experience. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. And we'll see you on another episode of the Ruck On Show. Have a good night. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Ruck On Show. Be sure to follow us on social media and reach out to let us know what you thought of today's episode. If you feel so inclined, please leave a 5-star rating and a review on iTunes. See you next time. Thanks for listening.